Our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrim Fathers landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before Jefferson etched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. Before the beautiful words of the Star-Spangled Banner were written, we were here. And for more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored here without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters in the midst of the most humiliating and oppressive conditions. And yet out of a bottomless vitality, they continued to grow and develop.
My name is Eddie Nunnery, native of Mid-County and live in the state of Mississippi. I've gone to try to register at this register office, and after going there several times, they failed me and told me I was disqualified to register. And after going there once, it was a gun fired.
Lots of people in Mid-County are afraid to go to Liberty and register or vote because they're afraid of being killed. Lots of them are afraid to join the NAACP because they'd be afraid to lose their job and have to go hungry.
Did you know? They didn't just enslave our bodies. They butchered our tongues for trying to keep our language alive. Let's go deeper, because this ain't in your school books. From the 1600s to the 1800s, it was law in slaveholding states that enslaved Africans could not speak their native languages. Why? Because language is power. Language connects memory. Language builds rebellion. And they feared our connection more than they feared our strength. Story 1. Tongue cut clean in the Carolinas, 1730s. An enslaved man on a rice plantation was heard speaking Wolof to his brother. The overseer ordered him to stop. He didn't. In front of a crowd of 30 other enslaved people, they cut out his tongue with a rusted iron tool. No anesthesia. No humanity, just screams and blood in the dirt. He survived, but never spoke again. Story 2. Louisiana, where language was treason. In the French-controlled South, enslaved Africans still spoke Yoruba, Fon, and Congo. But after the 1768 slave revolts, it was declared a crime to speak African dialects. One woman, pregnant, was caught whispering to her daughter in Mandinka. They tied her down, burned her tongue with a branding iron. She gave birth 3 weeks later, in silence. The baby was sold by the end of the month. Story 3. The Iron Mask. Georgia, 1812. A group of Africans was newly imported, still speaking their native language. To stop them from plotting, the slave owner had iron muzzles made. They were forced to wear these for weeks. No food unless someone else fed them. No talking. No crying. No memory allowed. One man suffocated overnight when vomit pooled inside his mask. They buried him without removing it. Story 4. The Sewn Mouth. Virginia, 1799. An enslaved girl, 12 years old, caught teaching other children tribal songs. The punishment? Her mouth was sewn shut with twine, threaded through her lips, hole by hole. She didn't die, but the message was clear. If you pass down the culture, we'll erase your face. Story 5. Slave Codes and Spiritual Silencing. South Carolina's 1740 Negro Act made it illegal for enslaved Africans to learn to read, teach, use African drums, or speak in non-English dialects. The punishment: whipping, tongue mutilation, muzzling, even execution in some counties. Story 6. Brutality. Hidden in Christian language. Missionaries told Africans they could only be saved if they stopped speaking their demonic languages. One account tells of an enslaved elder who continued praying in Twi. The pastor ordered her mouth to be filled with salt, vinegar, and ash, and sewn shut. She died from infection. They buried her behind the chapel. No headstone, no prayer. Story 7. The auction block translator, killed for speaking truth. One man on a slave auction block was bilingual in English and Yoruba. He tried to warn other captives what was happening. The slaver noticed, dragged him behind the auction house, cut out his tongue before the bidding even started. He was sold that same day, mute and bleeding.
We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. If Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. We give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power.
You had a lot of prejudice, which I hadn't been aware of until I read your book. That particularly when you and your uncle and your dad went to play Las Vegas.
Oh, yes.
You'd play a hall in Vegas when it was beginning to expand as a great entertainment center.
Yes.
And you'd find that you couldn't stay in the hotel you were playing in?
No, there was no staying. You couldn't eat in the hotel. And I'm not speaking about 1930 or even the 40s. I'm talking 50s. Every big black star that worked Las Vegas, that helped build it up, I'm speaking of Lena Horne, Nat King Cole, Billy Eckstein, the Mills Brothers, the people who helped not only that town but our business and contributed in such a way and would pack the joint. We could not walk through the front. This is in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you could not eat in the restaurant. To forget gambling, you couldn't get up to a table. They wouldn't allow you in the casino. That's the truth.
So you performed, and then you had to go out the sideway.
Out the sideway,
down
and if
the
you
street
had
to the ghetto, and
that was the only place. But there is mixed emotions about that. And I guess I had to live to be 63 years old to realize it. That by integration, we lost a great deal. We gained a great deal when everything started to integrate in terms of acceptance and this, that, and the other. But in that, what we call, quote, the ghetto, was all our culture. You understand what I'm saying? There was the colored barber shop, and I say colored because that was the terminology used in those days. There was the colored rooming house where we all stayed. There was community. And because we all suffered these indignities, it brought us, as black performers, closer together. And we shared experiences, and we hung out. Soon as it started to open up like this, and everybody could stay at the hotel they were working in, we very rarely saw each other anymore. And it's a shame. We lost that. It's too bad we couldn't have maintained a little better balance.
But the Africans just can't run things. Now, that's the very, very fundamental point in the international scene. See my point?
Oh, boy, you sure see it around this place.
Well, yeah, of course you do. You see them. You know, I have mixed feelings. I receive their ambassadors. They change all the time, and I've had I love them. They're so kind and so nice. And they're children.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah.
Huh? You know?
And they always want something like children.
Oh, God, yes, they want. Well, what can you do? I know, but what I meant is it's so childlike, the childlike faith and the this and that. And, of course, a lot of them are crooks, but we have crooks, too. But anyway, what I'm getting at is I think you've got in the field of business, you've got the field of education, so on. But there are many other areas, as you've well pointed out, where they can beat the hell out of us. Now, and they should be proud of those. Athletics isn't a bad achievement. And you look at the World Series, for God's sakes, and what would either of these teams done without, what would Pittsburgh be without hell of a lot of blacks, huh? And music, the dance, now, and these things, are they to be therefore just pissed upon? Hell no, they're important. And also, in certain areas, poetry, etc., they have a free and easy style that adds enormously to our culture. But on the other hand, when you get to some of the more, shall we say, some of the more profound, rigid disciplines, basically, they have a hell of a time making it.
That is so far.
And Ed Brooke, for example, is an exception. We've got to face it. In terms of good lawyers, there are damn few good lawyers among any group, but in terms of good lawyers, even though a lot of them go to law schools, I mean, it is not really their dish of tea.
Average black business can't even get the capital to present itself to the black population that the other people can get the capital to do. Now, one would ask the question, how can all these poor immigrants come to this country and have all this capital? If they had that capital, why did they leave home? And if they didn't have the capital when they left home, how are they getting this capital here when they have no credit records and they have no paper trail? And they have not, so who's capitalizing them? And I think if we begin to look at that question, we'll begin to get to the bottom of what's going on in the black community.
Black folk, I'm talking about black male, black female, heterosexual marriages, is currently at 23%. Down in the 1950s from 77%. We're down to 23%. 71% of our women are not married. 29% of them will never get married. 66% of our brothers are not married. 34% of them will never get married. This has been exacerbated by two other dynamic statistics. 72% of our children are born out of wedlock. Mm-hmm. And almost 80% of our children are raised in a single-parent household, principally by a black woman. This is
the hairstyle is not punk rock, it's not Mohegan Indians, because a lot of people relate it to the Mohegan Indians because that's all they know. There's a tribe in Africa that calls themselves the Mandinka warriors. They wear their hair in this fashion. They wear feathered earrings, they wear diamond and gold, they wear the finest there is, and I'm proud to be a descendant of the people. And that's the reason why I wear this. And the changes in gold is symbolic of my struggle, because my ancestors, we was brought over here, we was shackled by our wrists and our necks and ankles. But now I turn those shackles into gold, and that offends people. People ask me and say, do that gold get heavy? Nobody asks my ancestors, do the old changes get heavy on their neck? You know? But it bothers them because they know the gold is valuable. But that's the reason why I wear the gold.
So you learn a little African history, you get a little degree in Afro-American history, but meanwhile, they still own all the buildings, they run the economy, you still buying everything from them. We have to change the paradigm. So that's what I'm trying to teach. Symptomatic thought. What are the symptoms that will lead us towards total liberation? That means controlling our food, controlling our clothes, controlling the employment. Listen, in 1817, that's 200 years ago, we only employed 1% of our population. This is 2017, 200 years later. Guess what? We only employ 1% of our population. That means that if you want a job, you have to go to your oppressor. And they're not teaching you to be an entrepreneur. You can have a degree in business, an MBA. And that's just teaching you to be middle management for European corporations.
To help them to deal with some of the problems. And I think that until we begin to focus on these kind of situations, that we were going to be missing many of the basic points.
Stokely, you've been done. Okay. Go ahead. I yield to the elder statesman, my elder brother, the business sector of our community.
Well, one of the things that I keep hearing here, and I think you'd have to agree, would be that the capitalistic system in America is the system that we have to deal with, and the problem with it is that we don't have any blacks operating in it. I wonder if we would have the same kind of feeling about the capitalistic system if we were the capitalists and somebody else was sitting outside. I think we would begin then. I would be against it. I think that, well, Stokely says he'd be against it, and
somebody
is exploiting me. I don't care whether he's white or black or red or yellow. As long as he's doing the exploiting, there's something basically wrong. It's
difficult, really, to say that people haven't been damaged by the free enterprise system in this country. The failure of our cities is probably a direct result of the failure of the free enterprise system to do something about it. When big business begins to move out and leave the poor people to solve the problems of poor people, then you've got a failure.
Wait a minute, you can't, I'm sorry.
All right.
But you can't talk about free enterprise because there's no such thing as free enterprise.
Okay.
Capitalism in this day and age is monopoly capitalism. It is controlled by multi-billion-dollar firms, multinational firms. You know, it's controlled by the people like Rockefeller and Hughes and DuPont. Now, there's a real difference between those folks and the black man or woman who decides to open up a grocery store on the corner. That is not capitalism. But Richard Nixon has been trying to convince us that all we have to do is to get a little grocery store on the corner, and then all of a sudden we're black capitalists.
Well, if that's what Richard Nixon says, and I disagree with him, I'm not interested in small business as in those constructs, because it's amazing when somebody says business, and the person who's black is talking about it, immediately it conjures up a little corner drugstore or grocery store or something. I wonder why it doesn't conjure up General Motors for me.
It's not possible for you.
Well, I don't know whether it is or not. I guess I'll quit working if you're convinced that that's true. But I look at all the people around here, and we've got some organizational petitions that kind of keep us from operating together to change the system that we're also convinced ought to be changed. When I ride in an airplane and look down, and I see everybody protecting their turf. The National, this is protecting this turf. These are all black groups. Anything national is black, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the National Association of Funeral Directors, the National Insurance Association. They're all black. The white ones are all American.
It's white.
The white ones are all American. I don't know how that happens.
That's because we know our nationalism.
Well, but the point I make is when I look down from an airplane and I see each one of us as organizational heads protecting our turf, I said, what the heck? We aren't protecting our turf, it's their turf. We don't have any turf. So if we don't finally come together to get a piece of the turf, then we aren't going to have any turf to protect. And I think it is possible, and if we begin to talk about ways of changing that.
Stokely and then Nelson.
Well, I think that the real question is that people are not clear on capitalism because capitalism is a very vicious system, but what it does is it embroideries its viciousness with all sorts of elusive terms. For example, many of us would support capitalism because we actually believe that in a capitalist system, there's a chance for us to get the same amount of money as Rockefeller gets, because we're told that under capitalism there is equality of opportunity. So that we feel that if this year we didn't make as much as Rockefeller made, then we got to work a little bit harder, and next year we're going to make it. But if we carefully examine a capitalist system, we will see that it's based on exploitation, because the viciousness of capitalism, and the reason why once black people examined we can never be for it, is that under a capitalist system, the fruits of those who labor are enjoyed by somebody else. That is, those who do the laboring, the fruits of their labor, they don't enjoy it. As a matter of fact, we could say under capitalism that the fruits of the labor of the toiling masses are enjoyed by those who do not labor. And again, as black people, we have clear examples of it. If we were to get the fruits of our labor from slavery, just from slavery, all we got to do is go to Nixon and say, hey, look, you give us the fruits of our labor from slavery and we forget the score. We would be the richest people in the country, again, because under capitalism, the individual exploits the labor of the people. Now, people get confused because this is a capitalist system and it's a developed system. It's a technological system. So they combine capitalism with technology and development, and they think that there is no other possible way to develop this rapid terms of development without going through the capitalist route. But certainly we have examples that show the opposite of that. China is a clear example of that. Cuba is. North Korea, North Vietnam. These countries certainly in Africa, where countries have chosen the socialist path, such as Tanzania, Guinea, Congo, Brazzaville, Algeria, we see that there is another way to develop and get the same type of things that we have under the capitalist system, but in a system that does not exploit each other, where all of us work and the fruits of our labor are divided evenly. Let me show you how backward capitalism is. It's a backward system. We could make two statements about capitalism to show how backward it is. About America. America is a capitalist country. It's thoroughly capitalist. It's an imperialist country. But we could say that, number one, America is the most technologically advanced country in the world. And that's an undeniable fact. It's a truism. It's a truism. America is the most scientifically developed country in the world. And right under that, we could say a second fact, which will show you how backward America is. We could say that America, in 1945, made for her people better cars than she does in 1973. And if you analyze this, you'll see how vicious the system is, because here's America with its great technological skills, its great scientific ability, and rather than making a safe car for people that will last 20 years, which they can do with the scientific knowledge that's at their fingertip, they rather take this knowledge and build a car which will break down every 2 years, so you're forced to buy another car. Thus, you see, under capitalism, what they do is they take their scientific skills, and rather than using it for the benefit of the people, they use it to further exploit the people. And certainly this type of system is too backward.
I think Nelson was next. I concur with the position that Brother Carmike has taken with regards to the system of capitalism. But really, I think there are two fundamental questions that we need to get into. The first one was suggested when we started, like what is possible within the context of this system and the coming together of people and that type of thing, which I think as we begin to hear the things that people are saying about capitalism, it tends to start to answer that question. I mean, as we see the very construction of this thing. But see, to me, the most important question, well, let me put it this way. I think that we have to talk, one, about the merits of capitalism, which is what a lot of the conversation has been expended on so far. But secondly, and very importantly, is once we, begin to see that picture, we have to raise the question of how it is that we work within the framework of our existence in a capitalist system that we, I think, can agree that we oppose, at least some of us can. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty of the question that Mrs. Hamer spoke to about whether we're moving toward unity, the question of coalitions, the question of the dynamics of day-to-day work on real problems that affect us as a people. See, because we could hem and haw all day about capitalism and talk about how bad it is. Obviously, it's bad. And if you could tell me the 10 worst things in the world, I could tell you that they have been increasing in this country in the last 5 or 6 years.
I first heard about this story back in 2016, and it blew my mind. Born on May 23, 1946, at Annie Penn Hospital in North Carolina, Annie Mae Falls gave birth to Miracles, America's first set of identical black quadruplets born healthy. But with a spinal injury as a child that left Annie without the ability to speak or hear, and a husband tenant farmer trying to raise 6 other children, the Falls would soon be taken advantage of by their white doctor, who saw the quads as an opportunity to make money. First, Dr. Fred Klenner did something very strange. He named the girls after members of his own family, so that all the girls' names were Mary, Mary Catherine, Mary Louise, Mary Ann, and Mary Alice, named after his wife, aunt, daughter, and great-aunt. But it gets stranger. Next, Dr. Klenner immediately begins testing his controversial theories about vitamin C on the girls the very day they were born, injecting them with 50 milliliters each. But Dr. Klenner is still not done. He practically adopts the girls, puts them up in a house on some land, and uses them as the marketing face of the highest bidding formula company. But the girls and their family were not making any money. In fact, Dr. Klenner had it set up to where people can come and see the girls behind the glass screen like they were animals, and the land they lived on away from their parents was trash. But in the public, it looked like the girls were rich and famous, as they were featured all over the world as the face of the marketing campaign. Meanwhile, the company with the highest bid would be the first to target black women with the formula advertising campaign that would discourage us from breastfeeding. Dr. Klenner selected pet milk, which would set in motion a chain of events that would lead to Annie Mae losing not just the right to name her own daughters, but the girls themselves. Through Pet Milk's marketing campaign, many black women became convinced that formula was just as healthy or even healthier than breast milk. Most of the advertisements targeted black people, black women. Magazines such as National Geographic portrayed breastfeeding as savage and nasty. Pet Milk's campaigns using the quads became one of the first instances of black women being stereotyped as bad, cold, and incompetent mothers. But there is so much more to this story, and we definitely...
In November of 1898, white supremacists murdered and ran black people out of Wilmington, North Carolina, effectively ending any hopes of black prosperity in the city. Over 2,000 black people were ran out of Wilmington that day at the threat of death. The Wilmington black population never recovered. At the time of the insurrection, Wilmington was 56% black. Today, it's around 70% white. Alfred Waddell would become the new illegitimate mayor of Wilmington, serving from 1898 to 1906. North Carolina's white supremacists suppressed the black vote through poll taxes, literacy tests, violence, intimidation, and whites-only Democratic primaries. The number of registered black voters in North Carolina quickly plummeted, from 126,000 in 1896 to 6,100 in 1902. Wilmington wouldn't have another black city council member for another 100 years, electing Kenneth McLaurin in 1972. And the state of North Carolina didn't send another black person to Congress until 1992. This is the legacy of Wilmington 1898. The events of the Wilmington insurrection were buried for a century. For so long, black people were painted as the aggressors and the agitators, and the white men responsible went on to live great lives in high-ranking positions and face no consequences. Many of the men responsible for the racial violence in North Carolina and the insurrection had schools, buildings, and parks named after them, many of which weren't renamed until recently. Not because the people in power thought that it was wrong, because there was massive social uprising in the summer of 2020 after George Floyd was murdered. Wilmington, North Carolina was once a dream for what the black American could be. Free of chains, now masters of their own fate. But white
colleges like Spelman, Morehouse, Howard, and Virginia Union have in the past decade raised their academic standards. So few students can afford a higher education, and individual preparation varies so greatly that the Negro college student is faced by an enormous challenge. All conceivable pressures converge on the boy or girl. He or she must make good. Perhaps their greatest pressure comes from the knowledge that they are destined to be leaders of their race, and this is a spur that drives deep.
Black people can't create a concept of hockey.
I know, they created hockey, period. They did.
It was stolen.
It was actually runaway slaves that went up there.
Nova Scotia.
They in Nova Scotia. They created hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They are big on hockey. But they actually acknowledge that up in Canada too. We get our recognition up there.
In fact, I think it was a black person who created the Zamboni, the concept of the Zamboni.
Mm-hmm. The Zamboni too, yeah, actually did. Yeah. They give us our recognition up there. They don't treat us like that.
And we are standing up for what we think is right now.
Barbara,
I mean it.
you're playing into her hands. Let me speak to him, okay?
In the name of God, how much more are we supposed to take?
Take from what?
From you people.
I mean, you people. You sound like I'm a dog or something.
As we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
We want freedom! 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 We want freedom!
Don't you think we're doing it?
No, because we need our rights. They want all the rights. We're not going to give it to our school. Save our school.
And they don't have enough gumption to turn around and tell that Supreme Court to rule on the laws of the land rather than to mess with our children and ruin our education and put our country down. You kidding me? Now, there were appointed officials, and we'll impeach every one of them if we have to get this country back where it belongs. Maybe about time somebody do something. Now, all of a sudden, the tide is turning a little bit. You see how things feel now. You all come upset, huh? You're all upset. Say somebody taking your rights away.
We want no trouble. We don't condemn these black people. They are human beings too. We understand that, but we want our school. And we're going to get it if we have to go to Washington to get it. We are doing what they have done many, many times. Now, is that wrong, people of this world today? Is it wrong that we stand up for a change? For the first time, we are standing up for our rights. What is wrong about that? And why did he have to come over here? To order us to do what they want us to do. Now we're not going to do it. That is over. These people fight for your rights. And I mean fight for what you think is right and what's in here to fight for. You got a heart, you got a conscience. Fight for it. And give it all you got. And I mean the people of the world today better do it. Because if they don't, they're going to be dominated throughout this world by this federal government which is dominating the world today. No matter who you are, black or white, if you feel that it's right, fight for it. But fight for the right thing. Don't create a disturbance, but fight for what you got and for what you worked hard for. In my opinion, if anybody has the right to fight, it's the Indians. They were the ones that were here in this country before the black people or before we were. If anybody has a right to fight, they have a right to fight for it.
So you said there's two types of people, indigenous people in Australia. So who are those people?
There's Torres Strait Islanders and there's Aboriginals.
Okay, so
Aboriginals, that's the First Nation people that live in Australia, and there's us Torres Strait Islanders. We're from the Melanesians.
Melanesian.
Yeah, we're Australia, at the tip of Australia. That's where we come from. We're part of PNG. We got some blood from PNG.
Yeah.
Our island.
So pretty much, Aboriginals and what is it, Torres Strait Islands are the first people of these lands, right? Wow. And so how has like colonization affected your culture?
Like they came here in Australia and did everything on our land.
Yeah.
Took our land from us.
Yeah. They took your land from you?
Took our land from us.
Wow.
Without asking.
Right.
Asked the traditional owners of the
Right. Right.
And that's what they did.
Right.
The Negro can prove to the white man that he can live like the white man, then we will accept them.
And the only thing that scares me is the neighborhood all getting bad. And if we ever wanted to sell, naturally your house depreciates as the color get in.
If they move in, the next step we have to accept is intermarriage.
We can be sociable with them in work. We can get along with them and joke with them.
Sure.
But when we leave our job and we're on our way home, we want them to go in their direction, and we can go in ours.
Homes in this Philadelphia suburb sell for $10,000 to $11,000, and the people of Fallcroft call them their dream houses. Until recently, it was all white. Then, Horace Baker, his wife, and little girl moved in.
Okay, I'll go. It sort of just seems like a nightmare because you were only trying to move into a home in which you'd purchased, and that you weren't trying in any way to interfere with anyone else's life or their property.
They could have moved in 6 o'clock in the morning. They just got in there without anybody seeing them, but they waited till 5 o'clock at night. Early in the morning, they could have just snuck in there. Why didn't they do that?
Well, they're pushing too hard. They're pushing the white people too hard. And something's got to be done.
The newly appointed block captains of Delmar Village meet. Their purpose? To keep the people of the village informed and freeze out the Bakers. No white in Fallcroft has spoken out in defense of the Bakers.
We always fight when our backs are against the wall.
I work with colored people. They're wonderful. I think they're great. I mean, the people working for me, but I can't see them living on my doorstep because they have proved nothing to me.
I think they're getting paid to move in.
Any color that moves into this area, I'm sure, is only coming in here for one reason. That's to bust the neighborhood down, discourage the white person, stop the whites from moving into the area, and hope that it'll be converted to a Negro integrated development.
Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. What have the Negro race done for their country since 1960?
I know, but we've done a lot.
Did you know Santa Monica once had a thriving black neighborhood just blocks from the ocean, and the city bulldozed it away? In the early 1900s, black families built homes and businesses in an area called the Belmar Triangle, near today's Civic Center. It was one of the only places black residents could live by the beach in Southern California. By the 1950s, the community was strong, with churches, shops, and families who had been there for decades. But city leaders called the area blighted. Under urban renewal and freeway projects, homes were seized and demolished to make way for the Civic Center and the I-10 freeway. Families lost their land, their businesses, and the chance to pass that wealth on to the next generation. Today, if you drive near Santa Monica High School or the Civic Center, you're standing where Belmar Triangle once stood. Here's the truth. Santa Monica didn't just redevelop land, it erased an entire Black Beach community. Should the city do more than just apologize for this history?
The reason why the Negro Leagues are gone because Negro Leagues was doing too well.
Yeah.
So when they brought Jackie Robinson in, because he was good looking and he was articulate, went to UCLA. He fought for the country, but there were guys that were better than Jackie.
Yeah. Although Jackie was good.
Jackie was good, but Cool Papa Bell. I've been to the Negro League Baseball Museum 8 times. Yeah. It's in Kansas City. And you got Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, who hit way more than Babe Ruth. But Jackie was the model Black dude. He's articulate, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. But then we were in the major leagues in 1884 with Moses Walker and his brother Welber. Then we got banned from baseball for 60 years because the commissioner was like, no more Black people. Yeah. So then 1947, that's when Jackie Robinson came.
Yes, this is really important. Asian Americans were redlined from opening businesses in white neighborhoods because white people didn't want Asian Americans operating in their neighborhoods and didn't want Asian Americans profiting off of white people. But because the positionality of Asian Americans is weaponized to oppress Black people, Asian Americans were being given loans to open businesses in Black communities, even though Black people were not able to receive loans to open businesses in their own communities. And as I've said before, as a result of this, Black wealth is essentially paid out twice when it goes to Asian American businesses. Once when the individual pays for the goods or services, and then again when the Asian American business owner removes the profit from the community. Because usually people open businesses in their own communities, and this is mutually beneficial, where the business owner is making a livelihood off of providing goods and services to their community. And by being a member of the community, they're contributing and they're investing back into the community. This is an ideal situation, and that is not what happens with Asian American businesses operating in Black communities.
In every Black community, you have a Pakistani or Indian-owned convenience store attached to the gas station. You got an Arab-owned, you buy, we fry spot. You have a Vietnamese-owned nail tech spot. You have a Korean-owned beauty supply house. You have a Jewish or Caucasian-owned payday loan spot. Does any of them live where they get money? None of these foreign-owned entities support even the Pop Warner Football League or the basketball team or the Little League Baseball. You never even seen their names on the jerseys before. They do nothing for us. So we live in a colony right now, brother, and not a community. The people that own the property and the businesses don't live in the environment.
And extract everything out of it.
But a community is when the people that live in the environment own the property and the business and reinvest in that area because they are benefiting from it and they want to increase the value of it. We can't become a neighborhood again without keeping a dollar among ourselves.
This is Alberta Odell Jones, a trailblazer whose name should never be forgotten. In 1959, at just 28 years old, Jones shattered barriers as the first Black woman to pass the Kentucky bar exam. Soon after, she made history again as one of the first Black female prosecutors in the entire United States, taking on domestic violence cases in Louisville and fighting for civil rights in the courtroom. She even represented a young fighter named Cassius Clay, who the world would later know as Muhammad Ali, protecting him from unfair contracts when others sought to exploit him. But her brilliance and courage came at a cost. On August 5, 1965, at only 34 years old, Alberta Jones was kidnapped, brutally beaten, and thrown into the Ohio River. Her body was recovered, but justice never came. No one was ever charged. Her murder remains unsolved to this day, a painful reminder of how often the voices of Black pioneers were silenced by violence. She paved the way for generations of Black lawyers, especially Black women, who now stand where she once stood alone. Her story is not just tragedy.
My name is Jesse Harris, and I participate in voter registration in the Mississippi Delta. It was during 1962. I was arrested in Jackson for contempt of court and fined $1 fine and 30 days in Hinds County Farm. The first time I was beaten was in Hinds County on the elevator when the officer asked me my name and where I'm from, and I told him I was from Jackson. And so he beat me and he hit me side the head in the back and things. The second time I was beaten on the Hinds County Farm because he asked me where I was from also, and I told him Jackson, and he said, "Are you one of those Freedom Riders?" And I told him I didn't know what it was, so he beat me. And the third time I was beaten was on the county farm because I refused to move a 200-pound log. And the fourth time I was beaten because...
You're saying that the Igbo are from the tribes of Israel. Now,
Yes.
Are you saying this, or are the people on the ground in Nigeria also saying this?
Every Igbo says that the Igbos came from Israel. The 40 million Igbo people say that they came from Israel. And an opinion poll has been done. Daniel Lees, who earned his PhD studying the Igbos, who worked at the University of Basel and the Tel Aviv University, conducted an opinion poll. He interviewed 500 Igbos, some in Nigeria, some in Europe, some in America, some in Israel, and 497 said that they believe that Igbos came from Israel, and one said that he has had it, but that he doesn't believe. Two said that they don't believe, but they spoke further, and it was clear that why they don't believe is because they have the wrong notion that there are white people and the black people in the world, and they wrongly believe that the people of Israel are white.
Time out, this is pretty fascinating. You're saying that there's 40 million people in Nigeria who have an identity that they come from the house of Israel, from the people of Israel.
Yeah, who also have oral traditions to back it up, and whose lived experiences.
This is really shocking, man. How many of you actually knew that slavery happened in South Africa? Like, I have no idea. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. That's why I travel, just to educate myself, learn something new, and use this platform to educate you. Where I am right now is actually called a slave house. A slave lodge. And this is where slaves were kept. Slaves that came all the way from, I think 51% of them came from Africa, from Madagascar, different part of Africa, and also Angola, Mozambique. And also we got I think 21% from Southeast Asia, Indonesia, to be precise, 1% from Malaysia. And they were all kept, 4,000 of them. It's more like going to the Elmina Castle or Cape Coast Castle in Ghana. Can you believe it? My goodness, look at that. I have no idea. That's why I just want to travel all the time to educate myself, man. This is crazy. So this would be equivalent to what we have in Ghana, like a Cape Coast Castle. Wow. So I don't know if you guys can see this. It's like they've been snatched away from their family and friends and their familiar environment and became the property of the strangers. They were purchased and transported and treated as commodities. Can you guys believe it? This is the story of South Africa that I never knew it existed. Look at that. Did you know? Can you let me know in the comment section? Did you know? This is Cape Town. Wow. So just like we have Maroons in the Caribbean, this place, they call them, there's a name for them. I'll look for it and let you know. But ran away. Yeah, since the 17th, found a slave boy named Luis from Mozambique. He speaks Dutch and French. Whoever will bring him to the underlined or prison shall be. Oh, okay. So this is.
He couldn't hear, but he built 30 schools across Africa. Born in Alabama in 1925, Andrew Foster lost his hearing at 11. Segregation told him 6th grade was enough. The world told him no, again and again. So he found his own way. Rejected by colleges because he was black, He worked factory jobs by day, studied by night, and became the first black deaf man to graduate from Gallaudet University. Then he crossed an ocean. In 1957, he landed in Ghana, where deaf children were hidden or abandoned. He found 53 students and began teaching them after school. That one room grew into a school, then a movement. By the time he died in a plane crash in 1987, he had opened 32 schools in 13 African nations. He gave deaf children language, dignity, and a future.
The true history of the Moorish people at that point by these initiates. And that America was Almaricanos. We got the name America from Almaricanos, not from Amerigo Vespucci. And Almaricanos means El Morocco. And that Morocco was the Sultanate of Morocco was the ruler of America at one point. Now, This goes back into a very deep history. And he was here, he came back to America to teach the so-called black people, which were really of Moorish descent and heritage, their true heritage. And that this whole stuff about African slaves, I mean, look, there were a lot of slaves brought over from Africa, don't get me wrong. But this was not where all the black people came from. And the chopping down of the cherry tree. The Moroccan flag was the red flag, the red standard. It was called the cherry tree because it was red. Originally, it was pure red. They later put a green saber on it, or a green pentagram on it to distinguish it from maritime red flags. But it was originally red, and it was called the cherry tree. So George Washington chopping down the cherry tree referred to the fact that the first treaty with the United States of America was with Morocco, and part of that arrangement between their diplomacies was that Morocco had sued America during the Revolutionary War because they were enslaving their people. The Sultan was so they sued America, and America did not respond. So Morocco started taking hostage American ships hostage, and this resulted in a diplomatic squabble, which eventually was settled with the first. America did not respond. So Morocco started taking hostage American ships hostage, and this resulted in a diplomatic squabble, which eventually was settled with the first peace treaty of the United States of America. And part of that settlement was that Moorish citizens, going back years, hundreds of years in some cases, should be released. And all they needed to do was go to the president, go to the White House and say, I am a free Moorish national, let me go, and they would be freed from bondage. The problem with George Washington is not that he didn't recognize it, was that he didn't announce it. He didn't make it known. He obscured the fact even from his own slaves. He didn't tell them, we made a deal with the Moroccans and you can go if you're a Moorish national. And so this is George Washington chopping down the cherry tree.
This is the door of no return.
No return. If I take you, go there, you don't return to your country.
Huh?
It's very simple. In the past, that's why it all happened. They take people from here and put them on boats and ship them away.
And we are here at the door of no return, a very sacred place. This place saw for the last time about 18 million of Africans enslaved, leaving Africa.
From Benin?
From Benin. For 400 years. So they will cross this place and will not come back, ever come back.
The door of no return.
Yes, the door of no return. And today we had the spiritual return. That's you coming back here.
Wow. I came back through the door.
Yes, you come back to the door of no return. You made it back.
I made it back, chat.
Yes. So our ancestors, they suffer a lot. Can you imagine them looking at the sea for the first time? It's been very difficult for them to cross this place and thinking that they may not come back. Are they going to eat me? What is going to happen there? For the first time to see the ships, you see what I mean?
Yes.
They suffered. It was hell for 400 years or for our ancestors leaving Africa. So this door is here just to symbolize, that last departure.
Imagine wearing shoes made from black skin. Yeah, it really happened and they got rich off of it. Let that sink in. Medical students weren't just learning from black bodies, they were turning them into leather goods. Shoes, slippers, cigar cases, belts, jackets, all made from human skin. This is a sickening truth. In Philadelphia, a doctor proudly wore shoes made from black skin and said that they were the best leather he ever had. And this wasn't isolated. It happened all over the country. People wore shoes and accessories made from African American skin, not even questioning where it really came from. This isn't a horror movie, it's history, and it's time that we face it.
Did you guys know May 13th, 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department dropped a makeshift bomb from a helicopter, destroying an entire community because they were in a 12-hour standoff with a black liberation group called MOVE?
And Willie Lynch's How to Make a Slave, Willie Lynch clearly states, make the light hate the dark, make the old hate the young, turn the women against the men, break the families, control the minds, and you will never need chains again. This is Willie Lynch's method on how to keep a slave mentally. See, what he is saying is we don't need chains anymore. As long as we can control them mentally, as long as we can disfranchise them, as long as we can turn them against one another, they will always be slaves.
All of the films are too negative. It's all con men, dope addicts, dope pushers. We have made tremendous contribution not only to this society, but to the entire world. I mean, can you imagine how shocked I was when I discovered that a black man was responsible for the stoplights, for the street lights? I mean, whoever knew? I mean, in school, they never tell you anything like that. They're perpetuating images that, for the most part, are unrealistic. We have been fighting negative images ever since I can remember. All our history deals with fighting stereotype negative images. I learned that a black man is responsible for the gas mask, to deal with what I consider another level of stereotypes. But we are the ones that are going to the movies and paying the money and helping to perpetuate the images that the movie industry is creating. We have to stop doing that. The first open heart surgery was done by a black man. Nobody knows anything about these things. The percentage of blacks who live in the ghetto and who are exposed to the drug pushers and the drug addicts and the prostitutes. That is the part of our lives that is blown up totally out of proportion and spread across the entire world. And this is the only image that they have of us. My argument was, who's to say that a film that projects images of the blacks that are positive, that are realistic, won't make money?
One would assume that you wouldn't have to say how horrible slavery was, that you didn't have to defend that there was this institution that robbed people of generations of wealth. But clearly we have to say it. Many of you probably read that President Trump has been criticizing the Smithsonian and other museums for being too woke and focusing too much on how bad slavery was. Well, guess what? It was pretty bad. It was pretty horrible. And I know this directly because I'm a descendant of slaves. I heard the stories my grandmother told me because her great-grandmother was an enslaved woman in North Carolina. I know personally the stories of my relatives being sold and those who ran away and ended up being killed because they didn't want to be enslaved. They didn't want to be dehumanized. When you talk about slavery in terms of years, it may seem that it was a long time ago, but if you talk about it in terms of generations, it's not so long ago. Many people want to think that America is post-racial, that companies treat all their customers the same regardless of race. They do not. And I know this because I've been covering this for decades. I've been in the courtrooms. I covered the lawsuits. I covered the settlements. We're not post-racial. We're still dealing with the legacy of slavery. And until we recognize that, until we still know the history and what it took from generations and how it continues to impact the ability of Black Americans to build wealth for them families, then we have to continue to tell the story, tell the truth of it, the unvarnished truth. There's been progress. Yeah, there's some successes. I'm a college graduate. My children are college graduates. But pretending that slavery was not as bad as it was is not patriotic. It's a deliberate act of historical amnesia.
The treadmill was invented to torture and mangle black bodies. And Samuel Cartwright wasn't a doctor. He was a fraud in a lab coat who said if an enslaved person ran away, it was a mental illness called drapetomania. His cure was whippings, torture, and forced labor. Charleston, South Carolina turned that lie into profit. They built the workhouse better known as the Sugar House, a torture factory disguised as reform. Slave owners could literally drop off black people like broken tools. For 25 cents, city workers would whip you 20 lashes. By whipping, it was a cheap option. And then they had the treadmill in 1825, a giant paddle wheel grinding cotton. And enslaved people were forced to march on it, 3 minutes on and 3 minutes off. And if they collapsed, they died. The machine would grind them alive.
Imagine a carnival where the games were black children, stripped, chained, and auctioned. At American fairs, before the rides and bright lights, the main attraction was human suffering. Enslaved children were forced onto stages' mouths, pried open to check their teeth, bodies inspected like livestock. White crowds laughed as terrified little boys and girls were made to sing, dance, or tumble like circus acts. If a child hesitated, they were whipped in front of everyone. Some were tied to posts for discipline demonstrations, their screams drowned out by carnival music. Families were split on the spot, mothers begging in the dirt, while strangers bought their children like souvenirs. These fairs weren't about fun. They were a theater of cruelty. Black children were displayed in cages, forced to race against animals for bets, even dangled from ropes as mock punishments to entertain crowds. Every laugh came at the cost of a child's dignity and life. Even after slavery, the practice didn't fully end. Black children were paraded at fairs and freak shows, mocked, painted, and made into attractions for white amusement. So while today's carnivals sell popcorn and prizes, never forget America once sold black children.
That thing definitely.
So we are downtown now, getting off at what street is this? We're about to turn on Walnut Street.
And about 4th.
When we did our live, we started here last time. But this was part of the Mill Creek area. Let me show y'all some of the, I just have a photo here of like what the houses look like down here. They were like shanty houses or cold water flats. And that's literally what they were. They only had cold water. And most of them had outhouses.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine the history buried underneath the streets of downtown? Because all of this was black at one time.
Yeah, this was all the Mill Creek area.
It's kind of, now that I know that, it's kind of creepy to me because, it's just.
So Market went right through the middle of the town of this Mill Creek. Yeah, Market went straight through, and it went all the way up Market from here, like around, really, the main drag was starting at 20th, all the way up to Slough. That would be Grand and Lindell.
When you watch color television, you're looking at the legacy of a black chemist, Dr. Percy Julian. Best known for his work in synthetic hormones, Julian also created foam fire retardants and chemical compounds that made safer, more durable plastics. Those plastics became essential in color television tubes in the 1950s. Without Julian's work, broadcasting the world in color might have taken years longer, but most people only credit RCA or Bell Labs. The truth? A black chemist quietly painted the future.
You ever notice how early black kids start shrinking? It's not insecurity, it's training. This country has spent centuries teaching us not to take up space, not to believe in ourselves, not to recognize our own brilliance. And we can see what stolen confidence looks like, right? It's the little boy in class who stops raising his hand because somebody laughed at the way that he speaks. It's the little girl already hating her hair by the time she's 6 years old. It's the teenager who dreams small because every adult around them tells them to be realistic. And then you grow up carrying that. Grown men who don't apply for jobs that they deserve. Women who over-apologize before they even speak. Whole communities convinced that survival is the ceiling because confidence was snatched out of us before we even got a chance to practice it. And don't let anybody tell you that's by accident. This country has always tried to break our confidence first. enslaved people were whipped for learning how to read, because reading builds confidence. Jim Crow wasn't just about laws. It was about forcing you to look down, to step off the sidewalk.
Look at that picture. So many of us, like I said, either grew up with it, we learned about you in history. Tell me what you remember about that day.
Oh my God. You know, I had already gone to school, so I thought I knew what to expect until that day. But living in a city like New Orleans and, you know, going through Mardi Gras every year, I actually thought it was Mardi Gras that day.
Whoa. What, because it was the activity?
The crowds, they were screaming and yelling and throwing things. And my parents never explained to me what I was about to venture into.
That it was because you were going into the school.
Exactly.
They probably couldn't even imagine.
They couldn't even imagine, you know, and I think, you know, in hindsight, what protected me was the innocence of a child.
Yes.
You know?
And perhaps if you had known, it would have been so daunting.
Oh my God, I don't know how I would have felt about it all.
Africans in 1865 had been enslaved for a long time, but they never forgot that they were supposed to be in charge of their own education. And at the moment that they were free, they set up schools and taxed themselves so that they could run their own school. They did not ask or wait for the Freedmen's Bureau to do anything for them. They wanted to rule this thing themselves, and they had a curriculum in mind. They knew what the curriculum had to be. And the curriculum had to be a heavy cultural education. There's a wonderful book called by Weber called Deep Like the Rivers. Deep Like the Rivers. And that should apply to the education that we imagine, because it certainly applied to the socialization that we imagine. And in that book,
because we were killing them.
They had to get several nations just against us. We got jumped.
Well, we did.
Well, let me just say
Definitely hijacked.
And again, well, let me, before you say
go ahead.
We did have government established before they came here. The first president was not George Washington. That was...
They had like 6 presidents before.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, we had way more.
I know his name. Something Johnson or Jackson.
What's the name?
Andrew?
No.
No. I know his name when I hear it. I'm sorry, I can't think.
I can't think of his name.
We had
either.
6 or 7 presidents. Hanson. Something Hanson. John
Hanson.
John Hanson was allegedly first president of America.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one who gave George Washington his, elected him later down the line.
Matter of fact, they say his picture's on the back of the $2 bill.
Yeah, he's the black guy that's on the back of the $2 bill.
That's why they never put the $2 bill in the currency like that, because they didn't want you to see. If you look hard enough, he'll be in there.
He likely the one who drafted it.
Yeah.
In the first place.
He was right there when they signed the Constitution.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying he likely the one who drafted it for real.
Probably so.
The reason we have successful C-sections today is because Ugandan surgeons used banana wine as antiseptic, made precise incisions, and stitched the uterus closed. British researchers in 1897 observed this for the first time in Europe, wouldn't adopt it until 5 decades later. And antibiotics were first discovered in 1,500-year-old Nubian mummies near the Nile. Researchers discovered high levels of tetracycline, a real antibiotic, in their bones, as they were known to first brew fermented drinks using naturally occurring mold, which is still a very common practice in Nubian and Sunni societies today. And the reason smallpox didn't wipe out Boston in 1721 is because an enslaved African named Onesimus taught doctors how to stop it. He described how people in West Africa took pus from their infected patient and scratched it into their healthy skin. It was the first known vaccination method in Americas, and it saved millions of lives. The oldest surgical tools were discovered in ancient Nubia and North Sudan in South Egypt around 2600 BCE. They said fractures, drained abscesses, and even did skull surgery, and the survival rates were surprisingly high. The reason we have painkillers today is because of the Nubian medicine, where healers use willow bark to treat pain, the same active compound that later became aspirin. And in the highlands of East Africa, indigenous communities brewed Artemisia tea to fight malaria centuries before it became the basis for the world's most effective anti-malarial drug.
The only way you counteract institutional racism is to build power inside your community to counteract it. You cannot counteract it through individual approaches. That means that the knowledge that you acquire here, you must bring back to the black community to benefit that community, instead of going to work for IBM, General Motors, or Gulf Oil, or some corporation like that, that does not begin to benefit black people, only benefits you and this country. because it helps to perpetuate the lies about a democracy. So that's, I think, one of the major differences between black power and what they call integration. And it's so-called integration because if you knew anything about integration, you would know it's a two-way stream. It's a two-way stream. And I haven't seen any white people fighting to get into your schools from Georgia. I haven't seen any in Mississippi fighting to go. So what they're doing...
Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. Unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America. The primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth too. You just came and took it. You know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. It's a lot of America that belongs to me yet. You understand? I'm proud for being African. Now, in our school books, they tried to tell me that all Africans were savages till I got to London and found most of the Africans I knew were going to Oxford and Cambridge and doing very well. And somewhere, it was wonderful to find about the colored peoples of the world that they were very advanced. So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent. No question about it. No question.
In fact, the majority of black people were against Brown versus Board because they were like, we don't want to integrate with white folks. We want the money, the equal opportunity that the money comes into our schools so we can raise our own kids. And so the integration was a white folks creation because they didn't want to give the money to black schools. Because black schools was producing Carter G. Woodsons. You know what I mean? They were producing the real McCoys and stuff like that. So to kill that, they came up with integration. But that's the history that, if you understood it, then you would know what's at stake because you would know who the enemy is and how much the enemy needs to stay in power by the system that they created.
Are taught what politics is all about and what our history is all about so that we can have self-identity and we can know where our strength is, we will know our enemies and we'll know our friends. The Black Panther Party...
Or no white anything else. The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you.
In our offices, we do defend our homes. This is a constitutional right. Everybody has. There's nothing funny about that. The only reason they get mad at the Black Panther Party when they do it is for the simple reason that we're political. And they don't want to admit this. There are a lot of young organizations around, but we are a political organization. We're an organization that understands.
Of Alabama. Yes, sir. Today I want to say to the people of America and the nations of the world that we are not about to turn around. Yes, sir. We're on the move now. Yes, sir. Yes, we're on the move, and no wave of racism can stop us. Yes, sir. The burning of our churches will not deter us. Yes, sir. The bombing of our homes will not dissuade us. Yes, sir. The beating and killing of our clergymen and young people will not divert us. Yes, sir. The wanton release of their known murderers will not discourage us. We're on the move now. Yes.
The myth is that Lincoln freed the slaves, but Lincoln says in 1860 and 1861, it is a lie and a slander that we have any intention to abolish slavery in the slave colonies of the South, in the slave states of the South. This is just a lie, he says. So why does it happen? Well, it happens because, as W.E.B. Du Bois puts it in his great book, Black Reconstruction from 1935, the slaves took matters into their own hands. 500,000 of them fled from the South, withdrew their labor from the Confederacy, found their way to Union lines. And Lincoln's generals are going, what do we do with these people? What's our policy? And initially the policy was return them to their masters. But they refused to go back. They came in such numbers that this wasn't viable. And a few of the more radical Republican generals said, I'm not returning them. They were defying Lincoln, but they were defying Lincoln because enslaved people were forcing the issue. And ultimately, 200,000 of these self-emancipated black men find their way into the Union Army and Navy. Women serve as cooks and as spies. We often forget that the great Harriet Tubman, who had led a series of raids to free family members and then to free non-kin fugitives was the most accomplished spy for the Union Army. Lincoln eventually provided a pass which said, Harriet Tubman can go wherever she wants, because the point is, she could provide intelligence to the Union Army that no one else could provide. So this was a movement of self-emancipation. Enslaved people forced emancipation on the Union, on President Lincoln, through their own militancy, their resistance, and their mass flight from the South. So yes, history starts to look very different. And once again, we see the withdrawal of the labor of 500,000 people, both crippled the Confederacy. That's a huge withdrawal of labor power.
A black woman built a breakthrough campaign for Campbell's soup in the 1970s, but after it worked so well with black families, those families got replaced with white families as they scaled the campaign nationwide.
In our family, the favorite soup is Campbell's Chunky Sirloin Burger.
You mean Campbell's Chunky Chicken.
This is day 3 of 28 days of marketing logic that built the world. Her name was Caroline R. Jones. She started at J. Walter Thompson in 1963 as a secretary, which was one of the biggest, widest agencies of the Mad Men era. So during her lunch breaks, she read advertising journals to teach herself copywriting. Within weeks, she became the first black copywriter at the agency. Now here's where it gets interesting. While she was working on Campbell's soup, everybody else in advertising was doing the same thing. They were just pushing the product. She said, and pivoted to focus on the feelings. So her campaign featured black families and warm everyday moments. It worked, and black consumers connected with it. Campbell saw the results and then took the idea national with white families instead. But that didn't stop her. She co-founded Mingo Jones Advertising and created a campaign for KFC targeting black audiences in New York. She came up with the line, "We do chicken right." It worked so well that KFC made it their national slogan. So when you see brands trying to connect with you, she's the reason a lot of businesses know how to turn culture and emotion into money.
This has to be the most gangster person to ever touch the marketing industry. He got rejected by every mainstream ad agency in America. So he built his own and turned it into a $230 million empire. He had accounts like Burger King, Ford, Gatorade, Disney, Microsoft, and he founded the American Black Film Festival. Meet Byron Lewis. This is day 8 of 28 days of black marketing logic that built the world. In 1969, he started Uniworld. His mission was to sell identity. Here's a story that made him a complete savage. In 1993, Burger King was losing the burger wars to McDonald's. They gave Lewis a shot at the national campaign, but he'd have to beat Saatchi & Saatchi, which was one of the biggest ad agencies on the planet. So his team created the tagline,
"We may not be the world's #1 fast food place, it just tastes that way."
He was awarded the largest general market campaign ever to a black agency with a $170 million contract. They produced over 50 commercials, and Burger King had his first ever sales increase over 6 months. And he didn't get the permanent account. Think about that. His agency is still running today, and it's the oldest black-owned ad agency in America.
And every time we created something big, it was destroyed, burned down.
Like where? Wilmington, North Carolina, Eatonville, Rosewood, Tulsa, Philadelphia, Chester, Pennsylvania, Wilmington, North Carolina, Beaufort, South Carolina,
in Jersey.
Yeah, anytime we had any infrastructure, 2 things happened. Have you been to Central Park? You know what Central Park is, right?
It's a park.
No, it's not. Central Park was actually a place called Seneca Village. It was when freed black people decided to converge in one area, and they decided to redistrict that area, even though they owned the land and the houses that they built free and clear, and they destroyed those people, displaced those people, and built a park around it. There's a place called Lake Lanier. It used to be a thriving black town. They decided to kill the black folks, get rid of the ones they couldn't kill, and then people right now are boating on it every weekend. That's what happened to us.
The Holocaust is big business because Germany so far has given the Jews, I think, at least $200 billion. So it's big business. And some of you are still getting $1,000 a month. And a lot of people don't know this. And then people don't realize who brought the slaves to America. They were Jewish ships.
Wait a minute, that's all.
disrespects them. GPS is a black woman. Well, 3D imaging is a black woman. Laser eye surgery is a black woman. Escalators a black inventor. Elevators a black inventor. The roller coaster, the cell phone, our video games is Jerry Lawson. Mary Van Brighton in 1966, she invented the home security. You're talking about open heart surgery, Daniel Hale, plasma, Charles Drew. We can keep going. Surgical equipment, black people inventing, just constantly inventing, and they took everything and lied.
The history of Palm Beach? No. They created it. It was like a sandbar that they built up, and then they hired a bunch of black people to come on the island and build all the houses. They finished it, and then the island held a big party for the black people to celebrate, and then they torched all their houses and forced them off the island. Yeah.
They torched their houses?
Torched the houses.
After they were done building the mansion.
And it's probably the wealthiest piece of real estate in the country right
the Little Rock 9 High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, where the famous Little Rock 9, the 9 African-American students came to this high school when it was desegregating, which was fiercely resisted. Crowds of angry people gathered here, calling them all sorts of racist names, everything you can imagine, just because they were trying to go to school here. After the Supreme Court declared that it was unconstitutional for black and white children to be separated in schools. At that time, this was an all-white school, like how it was elsewhere in the South. The whole thing sparked a crisis. The Arkansas governor sent in the Arkansas National Guard to block the children from being able to go to school here. The president had to get involved and send federal troops down here just so they could be escorted inside. Could you imagine needing soldiers just to go to school? The whole thing was extremely crazy, a symbol of how hard it was back then for black people to get equal rights. By the way, if you think this is some ancient history that happened in 1957 and 7 of those 9 children are still living today, it only happened 68 years ago. It's extremely surreal to be here where that piece of history happened.
Even when you look at the magazines,
check this out.
They have magazines called Copper Romance. On these magazines, you see our women on the front of these magazines.
Exactly.
Why would they use that term copper?
Well, cool though, they did away
Even
with
during the times of the Cotton Club, they had magazines called Copper Colored Gals. Why would they use that term, copper colored? We gotta ask ourselves, why colored? Because they understood the 1828 definition of American in the Webster's Dictionary, which says a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races.
Facts.
Why would they use that term, copper, for our people and use the same definition in the dictionary? Make the correlation.
You know, one of the lines that has become clear to me in Kendrick Lamar's performance last night is 40 acres and a mule. And that line is particularly potent for many Black Americans. And it happens to be a line that I remember from my education growing up in grade school in the Bronx. And I vaguely remember what it was about. It was something that was promised enslaved people. I can't remember whether I was told it was before or after emancipation, but it had to do with the Civil War. And I've since had my memory refreshed, and it was something that the federal government promised enslaved people that they would get, and it would help them get a head start. But as with many promises given to Native Americans, they didn't come through. And I never really equated 40 acres and a mule because it was not something that really ever touched my life. But in thinking about it this morning, I never really equated it with something else that was very important to American life, which was the Homestead Act. Now, if you don't recall the Homestead Act, for some reason, there's a lot of American history that was that really stayed with me. And the Homestead Act was an act that the federal government felt was extremely important because they wanted to populate the Midwestern part of our country, the prairie. And so they offered 160 acres free and clear to people who would farm the land, ranch the land. I guess it was really only good for farming, but they would give free and clear 160 acres to people and they had mapped out a huge swath of prairie land. And it was white people who took that land. And that's how a lot of our Midwest cities came into being. And they didn't rescind that promise. They gave 160 acres to people free and clear. And all they had to do was stake it out. And this may be apocryphal, but I seem to remember in class hearing how there was a date and they had people lining up and they set off a bell and you could just go and stake out your plot of land and it was yours and you could farm it. And that was the beginning of generational wealth for a lot of white people. A lot of these people came from Germany and Middle European countries, and they got a stake in this country. And here we have enslaved people who were brought over against their will and finally released from bondage and promised for their servitude they would be given 40 acres and a mule, and a mule, and they got nothing.
Alabama had a Black Wall Street too, and they tried to extinguish it. Birmingham, Alabama once had a thriving black business district. They called it 4th Avenue. Black lawyers, black-owned banks, clothing stores, theaters, insurance companies. All built during segregation, when black people weren't allowed downtown, so they built their own. By the 1940s, 4th Avenue was booming. It was one of the richest black commercial centers in the country. But success doesn't go unnoticed. City planners called the area blighted. Then came zoning changes, street closures, construction projects that cut off foot traffic. Then came the highways. In the 1960s, Interstate 65 and Interstate 20 were carved straight through black neighborhoods, splitting 4th Avenue from the communities that supported it. Black wealth was disrupted by design, not destroyed overnight, but slowly suffocated.
The Civil Rights Bill is the reason why our parents got to come over here. 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was one of the most racist son of a bitches on the planet, had to sign that civil rights. But you know, Martin Luther King is right next to him. Right. Yeah. So that is the reason why Koreans can come here. Koreans, Indians, Arabs, Nigerians. It's because of the Civil Rights Bill. Right. It's because of African Americans, foundational black, coming in here, busting their ass, being treated like, being hung, lynched. Jim Crow from slavery was Jim Crow, segregation, Reconstruction, being promised that they were going to get this, fighting every war. They've been, black people fought in every single war and still being disrespected, not being able to buy homes. You understand? Burning up of black towns. And people go, well, why ain't they? They saw opportunities. There were black Wall Streets. There were black banks, black hospitals, and they came and burned it.
Black excellence.
Black excellence. They came and burned it because a white woman said somebody raped them, and they never did because a white woman lied. So this whole myth of African Americans not seeing opportunity, they did see opportunity. But you imagine, just like colonization in Africa, but imagine everywhere you go, someone is running you out of town. Someone's trying to kill your son from going to school.
Europe is not a continent. It's a small part of Eurasia. And yet, for the longest time, and probably up until today, you believed it. And if you talk with people outside of this gathering, and you ask them, so how many continents are there? They'll say 7, and they'll rattle it off. And then you'll say, no, Europe isn't a continent. Oh, yes, it is. Because they learned it in the 5th grade. And they learned it well, but they learned it incorrectly. There are 6 huge bodies of land. And you probably thought, North America, South America, and then you get to Europe and Asia. And Europe and Asia is one landmass. Continent, I used to teach geography. A continent is a huge body of land separated from others, or almost separated. Europe is not separated. But probably in school you learned that Europe and Asia are separated by the Ural Mountains. Check out Mr. Webster. He says nothing about a mountain separating continents. But we have come to believe that Europe is a continent because Europeans told us it was a continent. That in itself is part of the concept of whiteness. Europe is not a continent.
Can you explain how reparations were paid to enslavers at the end of slavery?
And this is something very interesting. The British had paid their enslavers with 20,000 pounds or whatever at that time. Well, the British government didn't have enough money to fully pay them. So that was part of the rationale for having the apprenticeship program, where they made the Africans work for a certain number of years after for free in order to pay that, okay? But actually, this is startling. The British government just balanced that payment in 2015.
Say that again, please.
They just balanced that debt in 2015. So we've all been paying reparations to the enslavers. Yeah, you had a Chase account, Barclays account. Right. Yeah, they just settled that score.
Generation after generation after generation and forever as either beggars or criminals. That's what we're going into. And it's because of your monopoly game. Now, before I explain those 7 factors, for those who don't understand Monopoly. Now, I play it every year in my family. It's a regular thing. We give out little trophies. Let me tell you what Monopoly means. Monopoly means when you sit down at a game, and the whole point of it is controlling land starting out, for instance. Then you have money distributed out to people that are playing the game. And see, with black folk, you never got your land, first of all. You never got the 40 acres and a mule. So most blacks don't own any land. You're sitting in a game where the cardinal rule is you must own land. And almost 99% of the blacks sitting in the game don't even own any land. Now, how are you going to play a game that's based on land and you don't own any land? Even back in 1920, blacks owned 20 million acres of land in the United States. They've lost it all. They're down to about less than 400,000 acres of land left in the entire United States now. You don't own any land anymore. That's why the black farmers came to Washington screaming about 2 months ago. Nobody cares. How can you play in a monopoly game, which is capitalism, you don't own any land? Now, the other thing about owning land is that you must have money to play the game with. And see, money has been distributed in America based on skin color, going white, yellow, brown, black. As you go down the color scheme, the less money you get. So let's pretend, for the sake of our little game, that whites got $1,000 to play the game of Monopoly, Asians got $800, browns, Hispanics got something like about $500, Indians got $400, blacks got $50 to play the game. Because you'd see again, you didn't get your $200 when you went past go. Because see, all the years that you were enslaved, you didn't get any money. All the years that you were Jim Crow, you didn't get any money. That's why in 1968, in the Civil Rights Movement, ran into blacks all through Mississippi, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Alabama, who had never seen real money in their lives. This is in 1968, never seen money in their lives. These are old blacks. Never seen real money. You'd show them a dollar bill, they'd never seen it, didn't know what it was. So you never got your 40 acres and a mule. And then you didn't get your money. Now you're sitting there playing the game. Now in Monopoly, you know to win the game, you must own land and you must have enough money to do what? Buy houses and put hotels on the property. If you don't have any money to improve you don't own any property, you don't have any money to improve your property either. So now you're in a dilemma. So you roll the dice in our little game, and your number comes up on the wrong piece of property that somebody else owns. And they got houses and hotels on it, and you land on it. Then what happens to you? You must either go bankrupt or you go to jail.
It all came from the American R&B music, you know, because we're always being influenced by the impressions, all them soul R&B groups.
We would listen to a Dionne Warwick song and try to sing it exactly as Dionne did it. If you are a group, you would try to study the Supremes, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. If there was a group who comes from abroad to our shores, we would want to go and see them because they have something to teach us.
Start imitating the rhythm and blues songs like say Smiley Lewis or Professor Longyear or Louis Jordan, and those kind of beat. We try to imitate it.
They brought jazz musicians down from the tourist hotels to play Jamaican versions of American R&B, and then they just made one copy of each record to play on their sound system.
Right now I'm on Butler Island, one of the biggest rice plantations in the whole South, and it was owned by Pierce Butler, one of the meanest, most evil, and one of the most richest founding fathers of them all. Born in Ireland in 1744, he was a part of the war between the states and England. He was a senator. He also was part of the Constitutional Conventions. He was one of the people who felt like, even though black people were enslaved and he was a big proponent of slavery, he felt like we should still be part of the census so that the South could have more voting power. They always evil, but Pierce Butler was bad even by their own standards. He was a military general, and they say that he ran the plantation the same way. The people who were enslaved by Pierce Butler, they weren't allowed to socialize or meet up with anybody else from other plantations. Even when the white folks on the island on St. Simon's would do special services for the enslaved Africans, the people from the Butler plantation, they wasn't even allowed to go to that. When Pierce died, he didn't have no sons, and women, they never had no rights in this country, so the land went down to his two grandsons. They was living in Philadelphia, but in 1830s, one of the grandsons, Pierce, who was actually named after his grandfather, of course, he married an actress from England, and he thought bringing her down here to the Sea Islands would make her more sensible about slavery and more open to it, but she came down here and she hated it. She even wrote a whole book about it. Let me know in the comments if you know what book that is, but then Pierce, he had some gambling problems. He ended up getting a lot of debt, and then something happened called the Weeping Times. The Weeping Time was March 2nd and March 3rd of 1859. Pierce had so much debt, he took 436 of us from McIntosh and Glenn counties and took us about an hour up north to Savannah, Georgia, one of the biggest slave ports, and he sold 436 of us, human beings, Africans, for $300,000.
African-American military men, known as Buffalo Soldiers, played a significant role in the story of the American frontier and United States Western expansion. These men filled the ranks of two black regiments, the 9th and 10th Cavalries. Black soldiers forming the 24th and 25th Infantries were also sometimes called Buffalo Soldiers. The black cavalry and infantry regiments were authorized by an 1866 law, which required them to be under the leadership of white officers. The regiments were based primarily on the frontier in the states and territories of the Plains and the Southwest. The regiment's main objectives were to protect travel routes and to control American Indian populations. In 30 years of service on the frontier, Buffalo Soldiers were involved in almost 200 major and minor engagements. The Buffalo Soldiers exhibited great courage and discipline, and their regiments had the lowest percentage of desertion and court-martial among the U.S. Army. The men of these regiments received their Buffalo Soldier nickname from the Plains Indians. There are many theories about its meaning, but it is generally believed to have been a sign of respect, as Native Americans revered the buffalo, and the Buffalo Soldiers had proven themselves to be worthy opponents. Buffalo Soldiers also played a strong role in another fixture of the frontier, the National Park System. Buffalo Soldiers served as some of the first park rangers in the western United States. At the end of the 1800s and beginning of the 1900s, the U.S. Army was the official administrator of national parks such as Yosemite and Sequoia. About 500 Buffalo Soldiers were stationed in these two parks during this time. They brought law and order to the wilderness lands, protecting the park's animals and trees from thieves and forest fires. Throughout their tenure, Buffalo Soldiers also participated in the Spanish-American War, the Philippine-American War, and the 1916 Army expedition to capture Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa.
Forced over 1,000 black residents to flee. That county remained nearly all white for decades. Some of these towns didn't fall overnight in a blaze of fire. Some were slowly strangled, cut off from access to railroads, loans, infrastructure, and federal aid. Racist zoning laws, redlining, and the deliberate placement of highways destroyed black towns block by block. Others were flooded to make room for lakes and dams, like Oscarville, Georgia, which was submerged under Lake Lanier, or Coahuila, Alabama, now buried beneath Lake Martin. These weren't mere acts of urban planning. They were intentional erasures of black presence, wealth, and memory. This history was never meant to be remembered. Mainstream textbooks ignore these towns, their destruction, and the legacy left in the smoldering aftermath. Even local historical societies sometimes omit or distort these stories. Survivors were often too afraid to speak. Records were altered and newspaper reports buried.
From Tuskegee, the institute which he founded, are emerging new leaders of a race which scarcely 3 generations ago was bound in servitude. Here today, the famed scientist Dr. George Washington Carver carries on his research. Born a slave, Dr. Carver has made important discoveries which are being used to the benefit not only of his own race, but the industry and agriculture of all the South.
We must put America first. This is a nation that invented the light bulb, the telegraph, the television, the telephone, the computer chip, the smartphone, the GPS, the integrated circuit, and even the internet. Basically, we invented everything. What is left? We invented everything. And now it's AI. We invented everything. Does anyone have anything else to say?
But now I would like to show you something that happens in Louisiana. The state of Louisiana, the great deep South, on a Saturday night, what we call a Saturday night get-together. We'd like to introduce to you the originators of the blues, Sonny Terrace and Bonnie McGee.
This is Blaine and Diane Smith. They owned over 600 acres of land in Hancock County, Georgia, until the government used eminent domain to give it to a railroad company. Blaine Smith's father had bought the land back in the 1920s, and just recently in September, state leaders allowed a private company to seize the land under eminent domain. So eminent domain is defined as the right of a government or its agent to appropriate private property for public use with payment of compensation. And in Georgia, this starts by first condemning the site. So the state leaders are saying that the Smith's land is part of the Hanson Spur project, and they took 4.5 miles of that to pretty much build a railroad in there. So Blaine Smith said the railroad company, the railroad folks, they played dirty as far as how they got the land, because again, the state leaders had to condemn it. He said the railroad folks, they defaced it, they created hazards through it, they devalued it so they can get their hands on it. So he didn't get fair compensation through eminent domain for his land. It just goes to show you don't really own anything in this country if our government wants to take it from you. And I don't know how this is going to go, because the Smiths were...
My father, he was a slave, born in a slave day. He was sold and he was taken away from his mother when he was 4 years old. After he grew up, he wouldn't stand for no whooping. So the owner said, we must get rid of this nigger because he ruined all the rest of them. Put him up on the auction block, and the highest bidder would get them. 2 men would take this can from the kitchen out to where the slave was and pour it in a trough. They ate with their hands like this. And when someone would get unruly, they'd tie him between 2 stakes so he couldn't fight back. And they'd whoop him till they got satisfied. Picking cotton. Cotton would grow tall as a man and almost looked like a snowbank. They'd stay there till the sun go down, and they all go to the log cabin. And up above the log cabin is the house where the old master lived. After the emancipation, they had heard that Uncle Sam was going to give the slaves a mule and $50 and 40 acres of land. And some of the slave owners offered to keep the slaves and take care of them. he asked them to stay on with him, and he'd give him a home and take care of him as long as he lived. But he said he just didn't feel like he was free unless he'd leave. He's young, just traveling around like a young man will. I was born March 5th, 1892, on Lee Prather's farm in a log cabin. I loved the woods, always did. It seemed like it's something out in the woods I enjoyed better than mostly anything.
Blacks in the South have such a low social status that you simply can't be seen in public with them and still expect to have any respect.
Time to help him try to go get go to barber shop. That's how the American barber know he not the full-blood Chinese. They say don't cut no hair. They put that way.
Civil rights movement helped the Chinese to attain certain status among the white world, more or less. Whereas we didn't have anything gained in the black world because they didn't have nothing for us to step into. Well, you know, we didn't march. Is that what you mean? Why didn't we get out and march? And well, I guess the best answer is that I'm a coward.
I don't think that they will marry black, my children. Personally, I think that Chinese people tend to, you put me on the spot.
This Chinese girl told me that she doesn't trust them. She don't like black kids. She said they don't go with her color because they think they'll steal things and they'll rob people.
And regarding copper-colored races, right? In the book, we got this in part 1 or 2 of the series, Crania Americana, a comparative view of skulls of various aboriginal nations of North and South America. In regards to the Inca, the Peruvians, down towards the bottom middle, it says their complexion is a dark brown and their hair long black and rather coarse. Down in the bottom, it says to these observations of Clavigero may be added a few others from Humboldt, who describes them as possessing a swarthy and copper color. Again, a swarthy and copper color. Swarthy means black or dark skin, and copper color. And in another part of this book, it says here, now as the Jews are red or a dark copper colored race, a dark copper colored race, really? Because the Jews that they show us today, these Ashkenazi Jews, they don't look dark copper colored. All right, reading from this book called An Abridged History, Africa and Her People by Rudy Johnson. And it says here, Noah, whatever may have been the hue of his complexion, was the father of sons of very different complexions. Japhet most likely was the white one, and from him descended the Caucasian race, as we shall presently show, the fairest of the human races. So the Ashkenazi Jew, as we mentioned earlier, they come from Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is the son of Gog, I believe, from Magog, but I believe it's Gog. And those are both sons of Japhet. They're not even Shem. The Hebrews come out of Shem. So these are not Hebrews that are in the state of Israel today. And the continuance says Shem was copper colored. Again, Shem was copper colored. Who also is copper colored? Here we go again. American, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper colored races found here by the Europeans. Alright, Shem was copper colored and the progenitor of the Hebrews and of the copper colored races. When the third son was presented to Noah, he exclaimed, Ham, sample black, for the signification of the Hebrew term means heat, hence black, and from Ham descended all the dark, complex races, as we shall see from the countries they inhabited and for which they were divinely adapted by color and constitution. From the book we have here, American Antiquities and Discoveries in the West by Joshua Priest. And it says here, but as it respects the complexions of these heads, now they're talking about Shem, Japhet, and Ham, of the nations of the earth, we remark as follows. Shem was undoubtedly a red or copper colored man. Again, Shem was undoubtedly a red or copper colored man, which was the complexion of all the antediluvians. This conclusion is drawn from the fact that the nations inhabiting the countries named as being settled or peopled by the descendants of Shem have always been and now are of that caste. We deem this fact as conclusive that such was also their progenitor. When we're talking about the copper-colored races of America, right? Shem, as that the great and distinguishing features and complexion of nations changed not materially. Shem was the father of the Jewish race or Hebrews, who are of the same hue, varying, it is true, some being of a darker and some of a lighter shade, right? Different kinds of hues, this copper color, but all the same, right? Are arising from secret and undefinable principles placed beyond the research of man, and also from amalgamation by marriage with white and with the darker nations, as the African. So it's separate, right? Then the African, these copper-colored descendants of Shem, different. But to corroborate our opinion that the antediluvians were of red or copper complexion, we bring the well-known statement of Josephus that Adam, the first of men, was a red man, made of red earth, called virgin earth, because of its beauty and pureness. The word Adam, he also says, signifies that color which is red. Again, copper-colored races. It's here from the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. I've actually found an original version of this in the archive.org website. All right. Again, the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. General editor is Merrill C. Tini, Dean of the Graduate School of Theology, Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois. So we're in page 330. We're in the H's. Ham, right? Says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood. And one of the 8 persons to live through the flood, he became the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Again, very important, right? I know that kind of confuses a lot of people, all right? But like we've been trying to say, all skin folk ain't king folk, all right? Again, Ham, he is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes, all right? Not the Nagas, not the Negroes, not the copper-colored races in America, but of the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. His indecency when his father lay drunken brought a curse upon Canaan. All right. I know a lot of the people fight that because they're trying to say, oh, that's just like a white man to blame the only so-called Negro, right? As the one being cursed. But again, they're telling you straight up here that Ham, he is a progenitor of dark races, but not of the Negroes, the Nagas, the Negus, the Nagas, the kings, the priest kings. He's the progenitor of the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. All right. And one thing we have to know and dodge the hijack in is that we assume that Japhet was white, that Shem was, white like the white Israelites, and that Ham was the only Negro, and that's totally false. Totally false. So that whole, oh, they're just trying to blame the dark skinned man and curse him. No, that's you're wrong. But again, Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Not the Negroes. Yes, dark races, but not the Negroes. Doesn't mean, this is telling you straight up that not all dark-skinned people in the world are related or of the same, nation, tribe, or whatever, or ancestor.
Berlin Conference, 1885. Check that.
Yeah.
Where all the colonial powers got together and decided to divide up Africa into 54 countries, right? Because before, Africa was the United States of Africa. It was just tribes all over the continent. There were no borders. So they decided to divide up Africa in pieces, and then all these colonial powers took ownership of those countries. There was not a single African country present at this Berlin Conference.
Yeah.
And the reason why they did that is in order to render each one of those countries helpless, because they're now vulnerable and small, right? Because before you had these huge, gigantic tribes, millions and millions of people. It would have been very tough for them to go over there and exploit and rob them of their natural resources.
So separate them.
So they separated and conquered, exactly. And King Leopold took ownership of Central Africa and the Congo. And his reign of death resulted in 13 million people being killed.
Yeah.
And he would enslave them. He would make them cultivate the land. And if they came back with, with product under the limit, he would cut their limbs off.
Yeah.
Kids,
and they sell the hands, the chocolate hands. They still sell the hands in delicacies, chocolate hands. They never taught me this in school.
Of course not.
When you want to destroy a community, when you want to destroy a people, as we will talk a bit about later on, you destroy the nature of their romantic love, destroy their ability to love one another in a healthy sort of way. And we will see. When you see and you think about the problems we have as people and as individuals in loving each other romantically, you must recognize in good part that problem and those problems have been set up by a political social system. Because we shall see that love, the love that we have for one another, is the greatest threat to the people who rule over us. And it is necessary for those people who rule over us and who rule over African people the world over, if those people are to stay in power, they must destroy our ability to love each other in a healthy sort of way. This is why, even if you're concerned with your individual love for your boyfriend or your husband, you cannot separate that love from what is going on in the world, politically and socially. Because the nature of that love is defined by political, social circumstances. And if you can't understand why you have problems in your love relations, perhaps a good part of it is because you have not taken time to understand the nature of the political, social situation in which you live. Because you have been made to think that your love is merely the concern of you and your partner and not rooted in what is going on in the world.
It seems as though we gave up. We gave up and just, our restaurants, we had restaurants, inns, and when we could go to their inns, then we forgot that man. In fact, I've had friends to call colored restaurants, the one that I'd go to this evening if I was taking New York for dinner, I'd go to it. They call it the Greasy Spoon now. They came to I don't understand us. That's the part I don't understand. We don't have enough race pride. That's what I see.
The white Jews that we see today have no bloodline connection with the Jews of the biblical period. They were converted to Judaism in Europe and in Russia. They were converted and have no bloodline connection with the black Jews who make up the biblical Israel that the Bible writes about and of which Jesus was a part.
Well, what happens to black Jews?
The black Jews are still in existence. There are black Jews in America. There are black Jews all over Africa. There are black Jews in Palestine. There are black Jews everywhere. Diane's daughter complained not more than 2 years ago that black Jews had moved on either side of her house, and therefore her property had depreciated in Palestine. Black Jews had depreciated her property. Jews had moved directly from Palestine to India, and the community celebrated its 1900th anniversary or something, and they had white Jews who had emigrated from Europe and black Jews who had originally come from Jerusalem at the fall of Jerusalem, had an uninterrupted straight line of connection from the fall of Jerusalem to India. All over the world there are black Jews, but the Zionist Jews who had been converted to Judaism have taken over the control of the definition of what Judaism is, as white people do with anything. If they come into it, they take it over and define what it is, as you stated in your introductory statement.
Let me just pop up one of the maps. So this is Nigeria, right? Isn't it? Yes, zoom out. This is West Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, Nigeria.
Yes, somewhere here. So this is the Kingdom of Judah. The Judah, right? This is Emmanuel. This is Guillaume Delay North West Africa map. 1707.
1707,
yes.
And it's showing Judah.
Yes, in West Africa.
Isn't this around where Nigeria is?
Yes, exactly where Togo is.
A map from.
By the way, all those borders and countries you're mentioning are the divisions of the colonizers. By the way.
Oh, sorry, I'm just still a bit shocked. The map from 1707 is showing Judah.
Yes, there's a lot
in Nigeria.
Yes, in West Africa. Look at this. Look at Euphrates here.
Oh, river. Oh, wow.
Euphrates, you see.
Wow.
Euphrates River. So that's why we have that there. So then we can go back on the map and check. I mean, you could just go on. By the way, the reason why it took that long, like 5 years, is the time to design this, okay? And to put all of these things there. If you, for example...
Sorry, you're so used to this information that your mind's not blurred. Me, I'm still a bit frozen. Yeah, I need to boot a bit. No, I'm just shocked that I'm just...
We can have a commercial break.
Yeah, I'm seeing a map from 1707 and I'm seeing the Kingdom of Judah.
Yes.
Where Nigeria is.
Yes.
Here is another map of West Africa. And like yesterday, this map highlights a region called Negro Land. There was an area called the Slave Coast that I've highlighted here. And it was called the Slave Coast because that's where most of the slaves were taken. It's also called the Kingdom of Judah. This is where most of the tribe of Judah settled after fleeing Jerusalem when it was sieged by Rome in 70 AD. A majority of the slaves were Israelites from the tribe of Judah.
Due to social media, they've gained a lot of attention. They've been around for a while, but social media really put them on a platform. Some of you may know them as Hebrew Israelites. What the Hebrew Israelites have preached isn't something new, but it was new to social media. And so a lot of people that had never heard the message or had never focused on the message began to pay attention, more attention, closer attention. One thing that I am wholeheartedly in agreement with, and we're going to focus on that today. For some of you, maybe you've heard it before. For some, it may be eye-opening. But I believe, due to my study, I have come across some information that I believe is irrefutable, if not near irrefutable. And that is that the slaves, transatlantic slavery, those slaves are Israelites. And that if you're descendants of slaves, you're descendants of Israelites. Descendants of Hebrews. Now at one point, I was aware of this. As I began to move forward and study, I did come to the conclusion that maybe some were. Wasn't quite sure about all. But now I hold a position that all were.
Slavery, our slavery is recorded in the Bible. So-called Jewish people, this didn't happen to them.
This didn't happen to the Russians. This didn't happen to American white man. This only happened to our race, our people. Okay, you have the transatlantic slave trade. Then you also have the sub-Sahara or Arab slave trade.
Yep.
Okay, and that's exactly what happened to us, slavery. Okay, go black.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and that was my point that I wanted to make, Bishop, is that when God said, "You will be sold to your enemies."